Jon, thank you so much for being here again with me tonight.
Emma, thank you. And thank you and I notice your introduction for all your guests. I mean, it must take you hours to write these things. So thank you. No, really. And as I'm listening to it, I'm going back through memory lane. And it's like, oh gosh, I'm almost tired listening to. I have had a few experiences, but no, thank you. Thank you very much for that. And hopefully that does give context for what we're going to be talking about. Why is it that I can talk about what I talk about and it
Yes.
learned it the old-fashioned way. Right? I didn't even know at the time. I didn't even know there were resources out there. Somebody might say, "Well, why didn't you think?" I'm funny. I don't know. It's sort of like I kind of liken myself in some cases to Jane Goodall. If anybody remembers Jane Goodall, she did in-depth research into chimpanzees because she lived among them. And she didn't even have a PhD at the time. She was an undergrad student, but what she was finding was groundbreaking. And so I guess I've always been immersed and then figured out. I always go, I end up in situations where I'm unfamiliar with. And then I guess I just, through um, quantitative analysis, as it were, trying to figure out, okay, what do we have here? And so working with survivors, and then with kids in the system, and then with the full range of inmates, quite frankly, and then the full continuum of sexual predators. So, me and my immersive experiences. And so, hopefully, then we'll be able to continue to be helpful.
Well, we're all really blessed that you've had these experiences because what you've learned through them is it's amazing. This is really uncharted territory in your career and in your field, and it's really neat to see somebody put in the effort that you have to provide this information. I always say you could have easily looked away, or even the things you have learned. I mean, it would have been a lot easier for you, I'm sure, to just keep it to yourself. You are also spending hours and hours during your day working with survivors, sharing really horrific things with you, and then you go right into working with groups of people who are also struggling with really difficult things. And then on the side, you're doing podcasts, late at night or on weekends or your Friday nights, and you're donating your time for free to educating people on what you're learning and what you've learned. So I think it's really amazing what you're doing too, Jon, and it's an honor to have you on because I think, this is definitely throughout the last 3.5 years that I've been podcasting, therapy has been a big theme with people just having terrible experience after terrible experience,
Mhm.
and hearing this information sort of demystifies some of the concerns I think people have and some of the really worst case scenarios that people have dealt with. And it helps them navigate that. So when somebody's in front of a therapist for the first time, now they have some tools where they can know right away, red flag, green flag, is this somebody that I should spend my time with, or is this going to be a waste of time? And they can kind of quickly identify what's a good fit, what to look for. And even if a therapist isn't as educated as you, now they have tools to go educate their therapist on how to work with them. If
Mhm.
they find somebody trustworthy and willing to learn. And I think this playlist that you're doing along with your channels, anybody could take this playlist that we've done together, or even just take your YouTube channel and send it to a therapist or a helper. And somebody could look at the material that you've done and on SurvivorSupport.net. And somebody could really have a good understanding of what the person in front of them is going through, and tools on how to be there for them, how to help them if they're a helper in the way that you are. So I can't thank you enough for your tireless work because it's really valuable. And the comments that we get on the channel from, people that you've helped, to the people that are advocating for you online now, it's really awesome to see the support for what you're doing grow, and just to see more and more people feeling more confident. I had just on the last premiere that we had in the chat, there was a woman that had said, when I'm watching these interviews where Jon's bringing up the chart, it's activating a part in me, that I didn't know was there. And I'm now learning how to communicate and deal with it. And I had a lady comment on our last episode how she's been taking her advice and talking to her parts, and letting them talk, letting them communicate, giving them space to write and journal. And she said she's felt more peace and more healing than she ever has in her life since listening to this series. So these are really, really big wins for people. And I think that it's just the beginning of the impact that you're going to make. So that's my long-winded way of saying thank you for being here.
Well, you're awfully kind. But again, I commend you. So together, hopefully we're making a difference. So
I love this chart, by the way. I really appreciate you putting all this together.
well, thank you, Emma. I'll continue to develop it. Okay, to bring people up to speed, these are the different levels, as it were, that are in a system. What we're seeing here, by the way, sorry for moving it back and forth. What we're seeing here would be anybody that has trauma-related parts. Okay, for those that have gone through really heinous and sadistic stuff, that would be on the extreme end of the continuum. That would be SRA or MK Ultra. Okay, this is what I'm going to scroll down. No, you know what I'm going to do? I will move this out. This will be easier. Okay, so I'm going to move the screen out so we can see it. There we go. Okay. If somebody, let's say, is co-conscious, or actually subconscious parts will still be there. But again, big difference, though not minimizing someone who had a drunk father, drunk stepfather that always came home and beat the daylights out of him and that kind of stuff. That'll create trauma. Okay. But for those that can relate to a lot of the guests that you have, Emma, that have been through sadistic stuff, okay, there are a lot of different layers. Okay. And so if let's say I'm going to speak to a therapist literally right now who's watching, and I think there's been some comments by therapists. Okay. I want therapists to understand and take a screenshot of this and understand that this is kind of the work. This is the roadmap. Okay. Now there's going to be different dynamics, but as I was working with somebody yesterday that went through SRA and MK Ultra stuff, I described it kind of like taking off from New York. You're going to land in Paris or something, right? So you're going to be traveling across the Atlantic. And the reason I use that analogy is, you know how air traffic control towers will hand off. They'll keep track of the airplane. Let's say you leave from JFK out of New York, I believe, right? And you're flying, and when you get to a certain point, they'll hand it off to another air traffic controller. So they do these handoffs. So then that air traffic control tower takes responsibility for it. So as I'm now working with this client, in a way, there's been a handoff from a previous therapist. And so I told her, you know what? I know where we're going. I can't tell you exactly what we're going to encounter, but there are stages. And not just in terms of these colors, but very predictable things as we start to move into these different levels. So as long as you trust the process, you'll get there. There's going to be one thing I can guarantee you, we're going to hit turbulence. We might likely hit some hurricanes, but stick with the process, which will get you through it. So as a therapist, what I tell therapists is, first of all, you need to kind of know where you're going. So you do have a lot of responsibility. If you're dealing with severely wounded people, you know what? Really get to understand this, because all of these boxes down here are parts. And usually each box could have 3 to 5 to 15 parts. So these are categories, much like up here. Okay, so when you encounter these parts, it's going to be different than encountering these parts. And when you encounter the little ones, right, the wounded ones, it's very different than encountering parts in here and parts in here. And each layer, as it were, or level will respond to the other differently. So it's just take some time to learn. Okay, actually, you have an advantage because I had to learn the hard way. But I was very patient. In the first client I had, we worked together for 8 years, probably 5 to 6 hours per week, every single week for 8 years. Okay. So what we're dealing with then as we start to journal, because this, if someone's asking, where do I start? Where you're going to be starting is right here. Okay. As you journal, we have a little arrow. I'll get rid of that one for the moment. Okay. So as you begin to journal, so Emma, we're going to call you Mary. Okay, just for the sake of it. So you're Mary, and you've been listening to the podcast, and you're going to risk beginning to journal. Your journaling, without you knowing it, is going to be interacting with that level. Okay. It's invisible to you, or maybe you can't really. Now, you may actually, in the past, to be honest, you may have seen these parts, which would also mean you've seen these parts. And oftentimes, then you've seen on that layer, I'm sorry, down here. Okay. What you probably haven't seen is what IFS calls the firefighters. I call them what the repressed parts. Okay. So you probably haven't seen these.
And that's where we left off there, didn't we? Down that right down
We
there.
actually haven't gotten there yet.
Gotcha. Okay.
Oh, you wait till we get there. That's when it gets very, very intense. Okay. So when you're starting to journal, you're actually going to be hearing from this layer. Okay. Now, one of these may come forward, but probably not when you're initially doing this. Now, we'll pick up, Emma. We're going to have you be Mary, and I'm going to be, and you can probably sense what I was being is this part. Right. I'm your defensive aggressive part, which really has saved you a lot of times. Actually, I've had to, so Dana, I'll pretend I'm Dana. We'll even make Dana a female, but I'm okay with my gender. So Dana's going to be female. But if we could change it, right? Because as we talked about last time, there's Jimmy. So let's say Dana is the aggressive part. And what she has done for you in the past is whenever you have gotten into a situation where somebody has crossed your boundaries, then Dana stepped in. So it's usually a very quick switch. Okay. And that's the one thing that if people can really give themselves permission to let this sink in. Unlike somebody that has not been traumatized, the one thing that characterizes a trauma survivor is they have become compartmentalized, meaning the free flow of access to their various emotional states has not only become dysregulated, but has become compartmentalized. So if somebody hasn't been traumatized, they can easily move through these various emotional states. But if you've been traumatized, then these are compartmentalized, which means this. If Mary hadn't been traumatized, I'm just trying to think. So let's say Mary's getting frustrated and her boss comes and talks to her. As we talked about last time, you know what? Well, let me draw a box here again. No, I'm sorry about that. Emma, before I make you journal again to me, do you have any questions? I'm gonna
No,
bring,
go ahead. Let's get to
okay,
it.
I'm gonna bring somebody that's gonna irritate us. No, here's our irritating person. Okay, so we'll just call it.
Irritating
Okay,
person.
there's our irritating person. Okay, the person that we just that just rubs us the wrong way, so to speak. Okay. So when our irritating person comes up to us and starts doing what that irritating person normally does. As a matter of fact, last time we used this, we're going to go this kind of arrow, and we talked about the irritating person. As a matter of fact, not to be anal retentive about this, but let's increase the size of this so we can see that person. There we go. So here's our irritating person. So the irritating person starts to poke us, right? They're sending little jabs. They're sending unrealistic expectations. They're demeaning. They are guilt tripping, whatever it is, right? They're sending little barbs our way. Well, if Mary hadn't been traumatized, then as her frustration was increasing, there would be a progression, like a thermometer. We're at level 2, level 3. She would sense it increasing, and she would be able then to respond with each increase. So irritating person comes up and says, "Oh, you okay? Did you get enough sleep last night? You look kind of haggard today." Okay, I'm making something up, but let's say so. She comments on uh, Emma's personhood, right? And so if Emma, but we're going to call Mary. So if Mary hadn't been traumatized, Mary would be able to come back with something, not like Zoom, but an appropriate. Like, oh, no, I'm fine. Thanks. And you look a little tired too. I don't know. So we're going to kind of match, right? We're starting to put boundaries up. But what'll happen is with our irritating person, because Mary doesn't feel comfortable with anger or with increasing intensity within her that's designed to set boundaries because of what she experienced and what she saw, she's going to be stuffing it. So here comes the first barb. Well, to a good narcissist, meaning to a malignant narcissist, sociopath or psychopath, that's if you don't respond, then what are they going to do? They're not going to go away. They're going to start to increase it. So where there was one first, now watch this. We're going to get our second one here. Paste. Where's our arrow? There we go. Now she's going to do double barrels. So they're just going to keep doing it more. So at first it was just one barb, and now it's going to be double. It's just, she can't help herself. This could be our mother. This could be a mother-in-law. This could be a spouse. It could be somebody, your boss, coworker. Okay. So what happens, as we mentioned last time, is Mary is feeling the hurt, and the flip side of hurt is anger. So she's getting more angry. But because she's had to become detached from her anger, she doesn't have ready access and now is building, because these are progressively getting more. And it's gotten to a 4 or 5, her level of anger. And all of a sudden it hits a certain point where Dana says, that's enough. Okay, so there's suddenly, Mary goes from being passive to what? And she gives it right back. But then even with, maybe we could draw 3 arrows, but she gives it with both barrels. And this irritating person now is shocked, and oftentimes the irritating person will run away. Okay. But what happens if the irritating person is just at a scale of 3 or 4, but Mary usually does what? She goes way above and beyond. Now, as we talked about last time, that's different than when Jimmy comes on. Jimmy nukes everybody. Okay. So Jimmy really takes it to an nth degree. Okay. So we're going to get rid of our irritating person. We're just going to put a little irritating person out there. We'll give them some arrows because we'll come back to the irritating people. We're back to journaling. So this is a long way to answer a question. Whoever submitted the question, my apologies, but now we set the stage. So Emma is going to be Mary. And so Mary now has watched the previous program, or even this one, and has decided, okay, we're going to journal. So Mary's going to write down in journal form. Emma, you're going to role play, right? We're role playing together. So you're going to be the voice of Mary's primary person. And so you have just kind of asked that starting question. So let's take it over. And now I will be some of these. It'll be funny. Let me see how many alters. And I'll probably include some that I haven't included here. So this will be a good thing for me to know if I need to add additional parts. Meaning in this level. Okay. So take it from the top. You're going to sit down, you're going to journal, and this is the first time really. And the proposition is this: you want to find out. Matter of fact, this is what we're going to do now. Okay. You want to find out, is anybody there?
Oh, you're asking me. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry. So you be Mary, and let's take it from the top. So Mary, let's journal for the first time, and I'm just going to leave these down here so I can grab the part, so to speak, and have their voice. Which is, you know what? And by the way, Emma, that's not a bad thing, because if somebody's risking to journal, the fact that they're sitting down, it's sort of like they're beginning to be willing to tap into, shall we say, they're almost a little bit of unconscious part or co-conscious. So they're sitting down and they're trying to find out. So the question is, do you really want to know? But okay, so take it from the top, Mary. What's the question? In order to draw these out, you really are wanting to know, is anybody there? So you're trying to draw them out to talk to you or communicate.
I just listened to Jon's episode on the imagination where he talked about systems, parts, dissociation, and it got me curious about myself because I don't remember a lot of my childhood and thought I would ask if there's anyone inside that would like to comment on Jon's video or who would like to come out and speak.
And a couple different ideas, by the way. But okay, I'm going to go back now in role play and we'll kind of take it up. This will be oftentimes what's going to happen is.
And then I'll go put it away.
Okay, now, okay, that's right. So you put it away, come back in a day or two, pick it up. And what you find written in a different style of handwriting is you see some words, you see a sentence or two, and that sentence says this. We've been trying to tell you. Hold on, wait, that's a period. Or no, that would be a comma. So we've been trying to tell you. And what's different now?
What's different now is I'm aware of you and I would love to get to know you. I wasn't aware of you trying to communicate with me before, and I am now, and I'm here for you.
Ah, so you haven't been aware of me. Well, who do you think's been tackling your mother-in-law this time?
Attacking your mother.
Okay, I just threw,
Do you
or your
imagine like
mom.
remembering that? Like, oh my gosh, I didn't even know I was doing that. Um, let's see, what would I say to that? I would say, well, I'm guessing that would be you, and I would love to learn your motivations for that and talk to you about it because I, in my position, didn't know that you were, and I'm trying to get in touch with the parts of me that I wasn't conscious of before.
Now, let me ask kind of off script, so to speak. What does it seem like as this part, how am I, you know how I'm coming across, how am I feeling? Now, first,
Definitely
of course, I would
frustrated.
say I have no feelings. Okay, but yeah, what do you think I'm feeling based upon how I've responded to you thus far, how I've responded to
Feeling
Mary?
unheard and not unappreciated. You're feeling like frustrated. You're feeling silenced and probably bullied in a way, that can't feel good to keep trying to talk and somebody's, and feeling like, why aren't you even looking at me or listening? Like I'm right here.
They're dismissed as well.
Yeah, dismissed. That's a good
There
word.
we
Yeah.
go. Okay, good. So that's very much, there's going to be a part that's upset with you because this part has been kind of two things dutifully protecting you for all this time, but also has been trying to get your attention. Where's an arrow? Okay, right. So has been trying to, let me do this. Wait. So now we're having different communication. Okay. So Emma, again, I'm going to call you Mary. So I'm this part down here. I'm Dana. I've been not only stepping in for you, not just stepping in, but pulling you out of the way. But then prior to having to step in, so let's say I have to step in when it comes to, so Dana has to step in when it reaches a level 5 frustration. Well, Dana will start communicating almost as soon as here comes the irritating person because Dana knows either this same person. So here she comes again. And so Dana is both tired of, so here's Dana, tired of doing the heavy lifting, but also wants Mary to stop creating such a situation to where it's necessary to step in and pull her back. And so Dana has been, this is an interesting thing. Okay, live here with you and me, Emma. I haven't thought about it, but this is probably very true. Dana has also been trying to coach Mary. Now, it may not seem like coaching, but when she says, stand up for yourself, dang it, what do you, right? We could say that's sort of coaching, maybe a little bit of straightforward, but Dana's sending, now we would say this is the critical self talk. Well, now also it can be the self condemning one, but think about when Dana, so here comes irritating person, and Dana hates this word. So Dana's saying, oh, great, here she comes. So irritating person comes on the scene. Dana sees through Mary's eyes. And so So Dana has been trying to kind of goad Mary into saying something like, stand up for yourself, dang it. And so because Mary doesn't stand up for herself, Dana then is always the one that has to step in. And that would be bad enough, but now, so Emma, you're going to be Mary again. You've now just said, fine, right? You've said, okay, I really want to talk. You've kind of sensed how frustrating Dana has been. So this is a very long way of answering this poor viewer's question. Like she just wanted to know how to journal. Okay, well, you're going to start the journaling process, and don't be surprised because it's going to be easier if you actually hear from, and you may actually hear from some of the nicer ones. Okay, you may hear from a playful one. Well, those are easy. Okay, but better you're forewarned. What happens if you if you see written in your journal, a response that isn't all that keen? I don't want you to just all of a sudden shut the journal and say, oh gosh, okay, I'm not doing that again. Okay, because Dana, what did you actually, now Emma as Mary, so Mary, let me ask, what did you originally write? What was the first sentence? Well, I'm sorry, and then the second. So you've sent a message to your parts. We're going to get rid of the irritating person. Okay. So as you started, what did anybody think? And then, of course, Dana responded, but Dana has been kind of snarky. Your second message, in essence, was what to that part that kind of rebuffed you? It gave you that response like, well, I've been here, but you haven't been listening. Hello.
Essentially, I would say something along the lines of, hey, look, I know you're frustrated. I wasn't aware that you were trying to communicate with me, but I'm here for you now. I want to be here for you now. And I'd love to learn about your frustrations and how we can work together.
Okay. Now think about, and that was well put. Okay, now, and that, right, that was intuitive. That came out of you. And so, Emma, we're still going to have you be in role play. So I'm going to be Dana here, and you're going to be Mary still. Let me ask you this. In terms of your own intuition, Mary, Dana is feeling what again? You know how she's responding because she's got this thing going on, right? She's started to kind of fire some little barbs herself at you. It wasn't, oh, I've been waiting to talk to you. I love you so much. Been here for you. Right? Dana's kind of doing what? She's kind of slapping you around. I use that metaphorically, right?
Yes.
She's not welcoming you with open arms. She's not welcoming this dialogue. It's, oh, you're my lost long friend, with now again, some parts, so some that are listening to us right now, you may actually receive a warm response. You really might. And that's a nice thing. There also may be a younger part that all of a sudden responds. Remember, as I started to work with Mary, the first person I encountered, the first part was Tina, the 6-year-old. Okay, but we're just going to stick with some of these parts because you may not, because I'm a therapist, it makes sense that suddenly I'm going to be talking to a younger part. Okay, but you yourself, as you're starting the journaling journey, what you're going to do is you're going to hear from probably this level. Okay, so you may hear from some of the more, I'll just use this term loosely, some of those that are willing to communicate in a reasonable fashion and maybe supportive. Okay, and then it's going to be very easy, but I would rather have people be prepared that if right out of the gate, right out of the chute, so to speak, the very first sentence that's written to you is from a part that's pretty upset with you. Because I don't want you to be shocked. I don't want Mary to be shocked if she's not. Okay, so Emma, I'm going to put you back into role play. So I'm going to reference you as Mary. So I now am the commentator just for a second. So, Mary, does it seem like Dana has given you some pushback?
Yes.
There we go.
Definitely feels frustrated. And I love the word that you said, dismissed.
Okay, there. So if everyone listening to us, if they're going to start journaling, if you are prepared to deal with, because more than likely, well, I can tell you who's listening now, it's the Danas in your life. I mean, the part. Absolutely. And in a way, it'll be a really good sign if you get a part of you, the part that responds is this part. Because let's say it is this part, the playful part, or maybe, I don't know, we'll grab one kind of, but neutral. So let's say helpful part. Okay. So it could be Brenda that you could hear from. So let's say the very first thing that's written down is, oh, Mary, I'm so glad. Yes, we were hoping, and we're ready to do this, and I'm so glad you finally reached out. Okay, now that's a positive thing. How might you respond to that? I know all of a sudden I've shifted, but let's go with this just for a second. Maybe this will be the whole. This will be helpful. This is actually very much kind of that first stage. Okay, so what you saw, it wasn't the snarky one, just for, I shouldn't say snarky. Dana, the Danas are going to be upset with me saying, you shut up. We're not snarky. We have a point. Okay, so I'm aware of that, by the way.
Yeah.
Okay, so I don't want the Danas all of a sudden to say, screw this. Euler doesn't know what he's talking about, so we're not even talking to Mary because he called us snarky.
We
Okay,
love the
we'll
Dana.
just say Dana is very forthright and definitive. Okay, and she has a point. Absolutely.
Protective. Very protective.
Absolutely. And Dana's kind of ticked, by the way. Okay, so let's say it wasn't Dana that you heard from, it was Brenda. And what I'd recommend is this: ask them to sign their name.
Mm.
They may or may not, but at some point in time, ask them to sign their name. Okay, because that eventually that's how you get to know people. Right. Now it may not be actual names. It could be myself, it could be me, it could be a lot of different. They will tell you what their names are, how they will, but then you can begin to differentiate. So it may be that Robin actually at first, I'll kind of put it that way. Maybe at first Robin goes by myself. So who am I talking to? I'm talking to myself. But Robin may be using the name myself because she wonders, are you really ready for if there's an actual name?
Mm.
Okay. So let's say we'll go back into character a little bit here, Mary. So you've written that first question. What does anybody think about what Jon said or what was on the program tonight or today when you watch it? And so you put the journal away. And then the next thing you know, you come back, you look, and here's the sentence. Mary, yes, yes, we're here. We've been trying to get your attention. Thank you so much for being willing. We've been waiting for so long, and um, we're thankful that you're communicating with us.
I would say I'm so thankful to be in touch with you. I feel like we're long lost sisters, and I would love to get to know you more. So I'm going to hand you the pen, and I would love for you to write anything that you have to say to me.
Okay, you put it away unless something starts to come up. You put it away, and the next thing that's written is almost again different style handwriting. Okay, good, 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 good. We can go play, and I love to color. Do you want to color with me? Oh, that's very interesting. Now, actually, I may have, without even knowing it, I may have actually just introduced this little one, but you can see it has a different feel, much more free. Yeah, much more free, right? And so that's why I just call it the playful part. But actually, Amy and Tina would have, eventually, we'll be able to trace that they have a lot in common, quite frankly. Tina can play, Amy can play. So very interesting. So Amy has retained some residual ability to be very much in the moment. So it's kind of interesting. Okay, so now what you've just seen in the journal is maybe a younger style of handwriting, maybe some printing. Some people will actually have at their disposal um, different colored pens or actually markers or crayons. If you feel comfortable with that, what will also happen is this. They, along with different styles of handwriting, you may see different colors that are very consistent. So whoever writes in certain handwriting may choose a certain color all the time. So I recommend that as an option. So keep at your disposal, maybe on your desk or wherever you write, give them some options. Okay. So in the second exchange, then, Mary, what you've heard is you were talking to this part that says, "Oh, we're so glad," and then before you know it, we're talking about she wants to go on swing sets or wants to go, will you color with me? And so excited. And so it went from, let's say, being pretty enthusiastic to all of a sudden it's almost like, wow, okay. So let's say the theme was, yes, 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 good. We're here. Oh, we're going to have so much fun. And thank you for talking to me. This little one says, thank you for talking to me. So how are you going to respond?
I would love to play with you. I would love to go on the swing sets with you. And I have this awesome coloring book that I am going to give to you as a gift and a present. And it's going to come with all these awesome markers and colored pencils. And I am gifting it to you to draw whatever you want.
You really think that's going to get you anywhere? Besides, you're paying good money for therapy, and enough of this. You got responsibilities to do. And by the way, we're tired of talking to you. We've tried to talk enough, and I don't even know if this is even going to work. So why are you even talking to us?
You're so good at this commentary, Jon.
What just happened in your journal?
My journal just went all over the place. Lots of
Right? Do you feel that whiplash effect? It's like, what in the heck? Okay. And we're doing this on the fly. How are you going to respond? Because look, before, it's almost, as a matter of fact, what's been there. You had two sentences kind of back to back, and then all of a sudden the whole mood changed. So what do you do with that, Mary?
I would say, Dana, I would really love to learn more about your frustrations. If you'd be open to talking more about them, I would love to communicate with you and for you to write those down so I can understand where you're coming from more and we can work better together as a team.
You make it sound so easy, and I've already tried this before. So you know what? I don't even know if I'm on board with this.
Well, you know what? I will leave this here for you. And anytime that you feel like it, feel free to pick up the pen, write down any of your frustrations. Know that I'm here. I know what your signals are now for getting a hold of me. And I'm really, really sorry. I'm so sorry that I wasn't listening to you before. And I promise to be better about it.
Sounds very good. What happens if you hear something you don't like?
Then we'll
That one
work.
just came out of me, by the way. That was very interesting.
That was good. Then
Okay.
we'll work through it. We're a team. I'm open to hearing anything, and there might be stuff I say that you don't like, and we can work together and find some common ground and be a team.
What happens when your mother-in-law comes along? Are you going to start to listen to me?
Absolutely. I will absolutely start to listen to you. If there's concerns, I'd love to hear about them and figure out how we can navigate that together. I know mother-in-laws can be a little tricky sometimes, so let's try to figure it out together. And anytime you want to vent, I'm here for you.
Okay, maybe. Okay. What does that feel like when I just said, okay, maybe, when Dana just said that?
It felt like she's kind of thinking about it.
Okay, which is huge progress.
Yeah.
Right? She didn't shut the door.
Yes.
So,
Yeah. Right.
so probably then she's going to do a wait and see. What do you think she's waiting at? What do you think that's about? Whether that's another way of saying she's going to test you. What do you think she's testing you with now or about?
They probably trust. I would think that in Dana's position, she's going to test me and try to poke me again and see if I hear her this time before she opens up anymore. She's going to want me to give her maybe some more ammo to trust me. And so maybe that'll be when the mother-in-law comes along and she might even wait till then, or, maybe it'll be the irritating person, if she wants to talk to me about that, maybe there'll be a moment, but I would try to leave that communication open, not be pushy and force anything and just say, hey, here's the pen. It's here for you. And I'm here for you. And I'm going to try to get better at listening. And I would communicate the second that I did have that communication. I would listen and be there for her in the way that I wasn't able to before. Right in that moment. So that way she trusts me.
Good. Okay. So probably then what's going to happen is, so Dana actually left the door open from her to you. She didn't shut the door. So she's going to wait and see to see how serious you are, which then gives you the latitude to then begin to communicate with those that have already communicated with you. So in your journal up to this point, how many styles of handwriting do you have aside from yours?
At this point, I have Dana, I have the playful part and the helpful part. So I have 3 additional.
There we go. Okay. So let's say you're not hearing much. She kind of goes radio silent for a moment. Where are you going to direct your energy then in the interim?
To the playful part, Amy, and then Brenda, the helper,
Okay.
since they were
Oh, Brenda's right there.
come
There you
forward.
go. Okay. As you're starting to, and the reason why you're directing it is because Dana kind of all of a sudden went quiet again, right? So you're kind of back to,
Give
so
Dana space.
I'm sorry?
I said, give Dana space and give attention to the ones that wanted attention.
There you go. And are eager to talk.
Yes.
Trusting that, and really you can take this to the bank, so to speak, is she's really watching now, watching to see if you're serious. And she's going to be okay with you talking to the others because that means you are now starting the journey. So it makes perfect sense. You go with what you've got. You've gotten some other styles of handwriting. So you've got other parts that are talking to you. Well, I'm sorry, a playful one and then helpful one. Okay. The more you start to communicate, a couple of things are happening. You're becoming more, you're allowing yourself, you're lowering your own defenses. So you're able to get in that flow state. I'll use that term. That's probably a pretty good term to use, right? Very much right brain. So you're becoming more comfortable with it. It's not as scary, it's not as weird. That's reverberating all over the place. And that is what, quite frankly, each part needs to know. And they're all listening. So even the ones that haven't said anything yet have been listening. So what you may find in the next few back and forth exchanges, all of a sudden, there's another style of handwriting that says, why are we even doing this? It doesn't matter. And it's only a matter of time till, things get messed up anyways. Different feel.
Like sorrow almost. Somebody who's
Ah,
like feeling very like disappointed, almost like internalized versus like actively maybe aggressive or potentially angry, like you said. It's sort of more of a disappointment and sorrow that I'm sensing.
okay, good. Right? Which would make sense. Think about someone whose emotions, the full continuum of emotions hasn't gotten segmented. That would make sense that somebody who is pessimistic, we may also, so somebody becomes pessimistic from past disappointments and hurts. If the flip side of hurt is anger, so Aaron and Dana probably are fairly familiar with each other. Now, whether or not they've been talking, we don't know. But that's why I kind of put them together. So that means collectively, Mary has had enough experience of starts and stops, or hopes and dreams that almost came to fulfillment and got dashed, or something got pulled away from her. And therefore, it feels to Aaron like it's only a matter of time till the other shoe drops. that almost like Murphy's Law, no matter what you want, the exact opposite's going to happen, kind of like a black cloud hanging over someone's head. Now, as I said that, that will be applicable to a lot of different people. If someone has lived in a situation where they've been disappointed a lot, they can feel like Murphy's Law. If anything can go wrong, it will go wrong. Or what I just said feels like a black cloud. If somebody has been a survivor, what just came to mind when I said black cloud? Those words will resonate way down deep inside because we're not talking just Murphy's Law black cloud, but what kind of black cloud? Maybe almost feeling like a curse, like a spell. So no wonder then, years removed, but since time kind of gets stuck on the inside, right? All these are really in a little time capsule or an emotional time capsule, okay? That you can then see how a current day part would have some of these emotions. So if somebody feels like, we're going to find out here. Let's find out if I wrote one. I almost need to write a few others. Okay, but so we've got, where did we go here? So Aaron is pessimistic. You can see at the next layer down, Patty, they would be very similar to one another, but much more profound. And then Patty being pessimistic. Oh, so there she is down here. Self-sabotage. And where would that come from? That would come from some of the earlier experiences. So maybe I'm just making up this, coming up with this off the top of my head right now. But for instance, I could see how, as a matter of fact, look, self-destructive, blame self, protective, that which is really that, because procrastination is a form of self-protection. So a childlike part was threatened. So we could have a primary, so that we could actually say the child, okay, so the child's being harmed, then threatened. So a part steps in, that part gets exhausted. So now a secondary part steps in, and the perps at this level that are doing this kind of thing, so SRA or MK Ultra, they know when the parts are being created. So now they're going to talk to one part who is here. Every single part ultimately is protective of the core part. That's one thing, by the way, every SRA and MK Ultra survivor needs to understand. You have to risk believing that regardless of what it feels like right now, on some level within every single part, they're protective of the core. And let me ask a person this. If you are protective of someone, does that mean you're selfish and bad? Emma, what do you think? What does that sound like? If somebody's willing to be so protective that they would be willing to sacrificially lay their life down on behalf of another person, is that selfish and evil and bad?
No,
There.
it's really noble and
There we
heroic.
go. That's going to be an ultimate healing piece for every survivor. Because how many of these parts, especially the persecutorial part, especially the primary gatekeeper, okay, some of them were told, some of them feel like they're demons, they're demonic. Okay. There's a way to find out, right? And plus, if you've become a Christian, there are no demons on the inside. Right? The Lord swept the house clean. Greater is he who is within us than he who is within the world. People just need to really understand that, okay? You're going to have to risk believing it. That if you've accepted the Lord, or prayed for forgiveness, and he can separate out, right, true and false guilt and all that. So think about the thief on the cross. He didn't, I'm giving a different analogy, but he didn't have a lot of theology, the thief on the cross. He just said, Lord, remember me when you come into your kingdom. He had a heart change. Mary Magdalene probably didn't know a lot of theology. Now, in her case, that was demonic possession. Okay. But it's important to know that if the Lord has come into your heart, all the demons, if there were any demons, okay, they're all gone. Meaning the door is shut. Now, there's a lot of challenges, right? And they don't give up easily, but it makes all the difference in the world as to whether or not you have demons on the inside or on the outside. And I'm here to tell you, based upon solid theology, a Christian has been set free from any demons on the inside. You have to know that, and you won't feel it. Okay. What that will do is it'll raise all sorts of questions in your mind, and that's good. But what I've just done is um, it's like a ship that gets stuck in the North Pole, froze in place. And again, how are we going to get movement going? We're going to take some dynamite, we're going to blast, right? And that crack will begin, that fissure will begin to run for miles. Okay. The truth of God's word is the thing that will blast hope. Right? It's gonna crack that prison. We're taking into captivity all the thoughts. Right. That term captivity also means fortresses means prisons, right? Taking every thought into captivity, but we're pulling down strongholds. There we go, right? You think about your opening prayer, Emma. So the idea of strongholds, the Greek word for stronghold is prisons. And what the perpetrators have done is they persuaded you, they convinced you of something. And without knowing it, parts of you have taken the ball and run with it, and it's not your fault. But what you need to know more than anything is truth. And the reality is this: they don't own you anymore. It doesn't matter about generational stuff. He who the Son sets free is free. Right? There's a period at the end of that sentence, by the way. It's free indeed. It doesn't say he who the Son sets free is free indeed, comma, unless you come from a multi-generational line of. Unless your handler was, or unless there was Masonic involvement, unless your perpetrator was Anton LaVey. It doesn't say that. As a matter of fact, who did Jesus wrestle with in the garden just hours before Jesus was taken captive and tortured? Right? But what did Jesus say to the disciples? That the God of this world, the prince of the evil genius of this world, right, has no hold on me. So God himself took on flesh, wrapped himself, so the invisible God wraps himself up in flesh. Yeah, it's an amazing concept. So when people looked into Jesus' eyes, they were looking into the Father of eternity. How do you explain that? Who knows, right? But he won. He demonstrated ultimate power over Satan. And when God places his life within us, he's not going to be roommates. The Holy Spirit is not going to be roommates with Satan. So whatever demonic stuff was going on down here is gone as far as the ties and the attachments. You don't have to come up with 87 things that you need to say in order to break strongholds. Okay, honestly, the thief on the cross didn't. How about, okay, here's another one. Maybe somebody needs to hear this. Remember when Jesus went over to the land of the Gadarenes, Gennesaret? Remember, and they pull up on shore. Satan tries to stop them with a big storm the night before. So they travel all night. Jesus gets out of the boat. It's the only time there weren't any crowds. And the disciples don't get out of the boat. Why? Remember, here come these two crazy guys. One of the Gospels focus on one comes screaming down out of the tombs. And who do we meet? A demoniac. Remember, and thus begins that dialogue between Jesus and the guy. And Jesus says, "Who are you?" And remember how that dialogue goes. And that guy was not a moldable, by the way. Okay. Very different. When they said we're talking, that guy did not have DID. Okay. So in that case, he said, we are legion. Okay. That was demonic. So let me ask you this. How much did Jesus go into asking the guy about generational bloodlines? I'm not making light of any of this, but this is really important. If ever there was a guy that had a bunch of demons inside of him that was hopeless, who also just wanted to be left alone, that's why, I mean, if nobody could stop the guy, why was the guy not living in luxury in the nearest hotel? Why was he in the tombs? Nobody could stop him because he also was in emotional pain. He wasn't purely ego driven. That may sound funny. He wasn't a psychopath. He had a bunch of demons in him now. So when he ran and fell at Jesus' feet at a little moment of opportunity, think about how brief the conversation was. That's about how brief the conversation in a moment of time between us and Jesus. We don't know anything about that guy. We don't know anything about his family heritage, the guy with all the demons, a legion of demons. That story has been preserved. The reason why most cultures who have read the Bible, that story resonates around the world. People remember, we are legion. Okay. But it's really important to know Jesus didn't need to know how much about the guy's background to set him free. So for anybody listening, whether MK Ultra or SRA, with a word, you are set free. Now there's residual stuff, yes, but as far as ownership, as far as hooks in you, literal spiritual hooks, it's over in a moment of time. Tetelestai, it's been paid for. It is finished. Okay. So ownership has been transferred. That's why Satan is so angry. Okay. So you've been taken out of the realm of darkness, placed into the realm of God's Son. God doesn't allow little hangers on as far as demons. Okay. So you are set free. Now, is there still a battle? Of course. But the good news is it's on the outside of you and emotionally. Okay. But as far as do curses still have power? Does the bloodline still have power? No. Okay, there's a difference between the residual effect, and that's where therapy comes in. Okay, because your emotions then will need to catch up with the reality, and that can take a long time. So the healing process is different than ownership. Who has ownership of you? If you became a Christian, 100% ownership is now with God. So therefore, if there's any parts that will tell you or feel like, and it's going to be one of the same, that they are demons, guess what? They're not demons. Because why? How do you know? Because they are there because they cared about who? That's why they're there. They laid down their life on behalf of the little one. And they were used and abused. And that's where all the anger comes in. The flip side of her is anger. So maybe somebody needed to hear that tonight. Okay. So I'm aware of the time. And I kept you on the screen the whole time. So in terms of, we're going to go back to now the journaling and what happened, Emma, and you did a great Mary, right? Okay. So as you were journaling, right, that we did a couple of different scenarios. What ultimately you want is, this may sound contradictory, but you're on the right track when the Dana within you, whatever that part, the angry part, ultimately you want to hear from that part that's frustrated with you. And somebody that's frustrated, how do they come across? As a matter of fact, look at the word right there. Defensive. So that part of you is not going to come right out and say, I'm really angry with you. Now they might. But they're going to test you. And that may come in the form of, you're going to get some snarky back and forth sentences. You're going to get, right? basically, oh, here's another one. Ready? Dana thinks because all she's known before is that Mary's gone away. So I'm really serious this time. Then Mary keeps, doesn't do the work. And so Dana's tired. This is very interesting. Dana's tired of getting her hopes up. And when Mary starts communicating at first, sorry, with these, right, it starts to get their hopes up. So if Mary starts, going to start to find out and then backs off, ultimately Dana gets hit with all the residual stuff. And Dana's basically saying this, don't play with me anymore. Do not toy with me. Either sit down and shut up. No, okay, that may be a little harsh, but it's, you know what? I always have to pick up the pieces. All these other ones can afford to do what they do, but look who has it. Yeah. Okay. And she's got a point. So it's really important for Mary to do two things. Validate, and that's why, Emma, you did a great Mary, right? You validate, right? Because if you don't validate, then I ain't gonna, if I'm Dana, I ain't talking to you. I don't need to talk to you. Got a point, right? Dana doesn't need to talk to her. So you, Mary, or whoever's doing the journaling, you have to convince Dana, even though Dana already knows your heart. It's a weird thing, okay? But really then Dana's causing us. So part of me is causing me to really rethink this. Are you ready for the journey? Are you in it for the long haul this time? And if you are, guess who's going to be with you? Not only the Lord's going to be with you, but guess who you have to be there for you. How much strength does Dana have? How much tinsel strength? Don't mess with Dana. And then Dana has a sense there's a whole lot of backup going on. Okay. So for the first time, if you really start, if you want to know, so that stage is how badly do you want to know? And if you really want to know, and if you tell them, so don't start this unless you're serious. And if you're serious, then tell them, and they'll have that sense. Then the journey begins. And the journey of 1,000 miles begins with, right? And so what'll start to happen, aside from my little spinning pizza there, is you're now going to begin with the journal. So let's say you make it through the first couple of exchanges. In that case, those were easy. You know you're on the right track and making progress when that angry part starts. Do not shut that angry part down and don't be fearful of that angry part. Dana holds the key to going to the next level. Okay, but Dana is tired of getting jerked around. Dana's just kind of sick and tired of this whole thing. And Dana doesn't want you stirring stuff up if you're not going to be serious about it. But if you're serious this time and going to see it through, then Dana will start to respect you. And then you can start to, and the goal will be this, you're going to start to have one-on-one dialogue. Now, as we sort of showed in the journal, we're starting to have, as a matter of fact, let me draw it this way. Do we have back and forth? Yes, arrows. Here we go. This is what it's like. There we go. So journaling is going to begin that process. Okay, so we'll copy and we'll paste. So not just a one-way thing. And eventually, if they can begin to trust you, now you know you're on the right track because now in the journal, so we'll get rid of that one. Okay, you're starting to have back and forth. And we could auto-populate this, right? We would start to have the arrows going to every part. Okay, so I guess we started with a question and I maintained this question about how do you journal? So it's starting the process, being willing to now go the distance. Being prepared for you're going to experience a part that is going to put you through the ringer a little bit. Okay, it may right up front, or it may sooner or later right? Because it may be that you're going to hear from these parts at first. And that's wonderful, but be prepared that at some point in time, you're going to hear from your Dana, whoever that is. Okay, because this is real life. Dana is the one that has to deal with who? Okay. And this is before any memories come up. Okay, so this is just in the everyday. Now, Dana probably knows some things. She may or may not. But because by degree she's connected with Jimmy, Jimmy knows some things, but Jimmy doesn't know half of what they do down there. But you're starting to understand and get a feel for this process, which is what you're going to need because you're really shifting into that flow state, that right brain state. You're going to need to know, you're going to be, you're going to need to be really comfortable with that because when these parts come up, these are going to be more intense. These are going to also have some memories. But this is when it starts to get really, I said really negative because I looked at hypercritical. Okay, you're going to start to encounter for a couple of different reasons. We'll go into why. But you notice how it says really negative and hypercritical. Now, you thought Dana was critical. You haven't met Nancy yet, but you actually have in the past. So guess at what point in time? Guess what? Okay, so if you start the process, you will be at this level first, but eventually, now it doesn't mean you're suddenly going to have a tidal wave. No, what it means is as long as you're able to get the feel of how this works, then little by little, what's going to happen is you'll become used to the more difficult conversations. And that conversation and that dialogue, and really the truth that's starting to emerge, both in terms of they know you're in there, you've got staying power, you're proving yourself, you're able to handle some of the stuff that's coming up. That truth is going to draw, almost awaken, but it's really not awaken. That's going to draw Nancy up to the surface. Okay. So when Nancy comes up to the surface, maybe she pulls Dana in. We'll just put it, oh, what happened there? So eventually, it's another way of saying whatever these ones feel, these feel it more intensely. So before you know it, you're going to be hearing from Nancy, and that's gonna be a harder conversation even. So if you can't handle it at one level, you're going to find that you're not going to be able to handle it, and they know, and they sense it. But if you're willing to hang in there, then what it'll do is the truth and that also the hope, the little droplets of water of truth are going to start to sink into this level. The little rays of sunshine are going to finally, the little light beams are going to go into the darkness. And that darkness is going to, I'm sorry, the light also will have a way of drawing them forward. Okay. Where we're going, and it's going to be really productive when you start to hear from those at this level. This is where we're going, because once we're there, then we're going to start to hear from these. But these are going to be the ones that are going to be your key allies. And not that these aren't, okay? But right now, or before you interact with them, they feel like the enemy. They feel like, because they're going to try to silence these. So it's like starting off on a journey, and you come to certain little villages, and before you know it, you've made peace with, so now you have a little, you're almost like a little Indian nation here. But now you have to, or now you're a little band of brothers. Okay. So you're getting to know them. And now you're taking them with you on this journey. And before you know it, you're going into some other lands, as it were, into other territories. So the same dynamic that's starting here will take place here. But this is when it'll start to become more intense, because also intermittently, especially in therapy, but still in the journal, you will find that some of these, as Frank Anderson says, they storm the gates. I just say it's like Tina, for instance, the little 6-year-old, she zigs and zags like a little football player and she makes it up to the top. And then she'll go back down. So it's not 100% neat and clean like this, because every now and then, but it still means a lot of progress. Actually, it really means progress. So as you're starting to get to know the different parts of you, every now and then, you can anticipate getting a memory or a flash of something. Okay, and we're going to talk about how all of that happens. But the more you get to know those parts of you, right, you're starting to get to know them, and then you're starting to get to know these parts, then stuff from down here is going to start to be released. And it's going to come up to the top. Okay. But that's very much in the working stage of therapy. Emma, I kept you on the screen. Bless your heart. You were, first of all, you were a great role player, right? A great Mary. Any questions that you have?
I guess what have you seen not work? Maybe, I don't know. Everything I said might not have been perfect. But what would do you have any tips for people to maybe accelerate the process of, oh my gosh, my dog's digging in his little bed. Sorry if you guys can hear that.
I can't hear it. That's beautiful. That's funny.
Do you have any tips for maybe ways that people could, I don't want to say accelerate necessarily, because I know that this is going to go at its own time, but maybe to things that didn't work maybe, or things to not do when they're starting this?
Yeah, so just off the top of my head, what not to do is what we were ideally trying to avoid. What not to do is don't start and stop. Now, part of that is very normal, but there's a difference between going, okay, I want to know, and oh, this is difficult, versus I want to know, then forget it, I'm out of here. Two different things. Okay, let's bring you back here. Okay, meaning don't get on the plane if just after takeoff you say, turn the plane around, I want to get off. Okay, don't do that. The fact that somebody's probably still watching this episode means they're on board. Okay, so I mean, don't start and stop as far as like put your toe in and say, screw it, forget it, nothing ever happened. Here it is, I'd rather have my family. Literally. And let's say the abuse came from the family. Okay, so better to not start than start and stop. Okay, that's one thing. I would recommend staying away from hypnosis. Now, this is just me. Now, Bessel van der Kolk does hypnosis. Even, gosh, a lot of people do. Collins Ross, talk about one of the pioneers in this. He does hypnosis. I'm just not comfortable with hypnosis. And the reason being is it will bring stuff up, or if it does, and it depends upon who is doing it, but let's say it comes up. Well, what's happened is inevitably it's going to bring the defenses down. It's going to allow somebody to release a memory. Right? Because ultimately somebody's stuck. There's something trying to come up, and up comes a memory that maybe Tina has. And then you come out of the altered state, let's say being hypnotized. So you come back. So now has been disclosed a memory. Well, a number of them have heard what came out. But I really like IFS, Frank Anderson, when he says, you know what, he will ask a lot of these parts, can I have permission to talk to, are you okay if, and that's a great thing. I actually don't do that. I'll tell you why. I forget, and it just kind of goes in the flow. But the idea is this: you need to honor the resistance. Now, there's going to be some parts that are resistant just because they're being snarky, or not snarky. It's usually part of Mary is going to be resistant. You can't put this in anybody's face kind of thing. Like you're going to see it and you're going to deal with it. It will not work. Why? Because some of these, could be even some of these, but usually at this level, they're going to be listening to what is, oh, this is right. Here it is. Let's say Tina is drawn up and disclosed and then gone back. So the gig's up, the truth, meaning a secret has been disclosed. Well, I eventually will give a name to this one. This one will come up and we'll take that memory and bring it back down. So now, Mary disclosed something in session on Tuesday. Let's say she's back for Thursday, and everybody will have, or at least she will have forgotten. It's too soon. So, yeah, I need to be careful because if you have had a therapist, if you have a therapist that does hypnosis, if it works, fine. What I have found is the greater the degree of trauma, hypnosis is just, I think it's unnecessary myself. Now, if it's in a therapeutic, let's say a hospital setting or something, I don't know. I still almost think it's too soon. So I personally just stay away from.
Real quick, I'm trying to think of how exactly she said it, but I just want to say, I think hypnosis is a really important thing to learn. I took a course on it and learned about it in 2016 because I had no idea that I had an unconscious and a conscious mind. And I was so shocked that there was so much about my brain that I didn't know, that I learned about that in NLP because it's everywhere. Like it's being used against us. So I think it's really good that people know about it and what it is and how it was used against them. But I interviewed a survivor named Kathy O'Brien, and I've had a couple of survivors talk about this, but I'm with you. I believe in a therapeutic setting, if you're getting it as a treatment, to be very careful. I'm pretty against it. I don't know of any instance I could really advocate for necessarily. But Kathy O'Brien says something along the lines of survivors that have gone through this type of trauma they're already unconscious. You want to keep that person conscious. You don't want to put them into more unconscious, essentially, you know? And so
Yeah.
I think I'm definitely aligned with you on that. There's some people very interested in it as a therapeutic option. I think it's good to learn about it. I think it's a really big part of our lives, whether you've been through trauma or not. Even if you watch your TV, it's hypnotizing you. It's waging a war against your mind, right? But when somebody's been unconscious for so long, you're keeping them unconscious by putting them in a state of hypnosis. That's exactly that's what their whole life was. I think I love what you do where you make them more conscious. You're having them read, actually take their hand and write. You are having them have conscious conversations, and they're becoming more aware and more expansive versus staying unconscious. Even if the therapy works, they're still unconscious going through it if they're under hypnosis, you know? So I'm definitely with you on that. And I think it's definitely an important thing to just bring up for people.
Yeah. And as you were describing that, I thought, here's another reason why is ultimately as time goes on, what's going to eventually happen is, especially if someone is a victim of SRA or MK Ultra, right? This whole schematic drawing is going to it's one way of envisioning. There's different layers. Okay. Eventually, what you want, I love your term, Emma, reverse engineering. That you've used that a number of times, and I love that because in a way, we're having to reverse engineer the damage.
Yes.
So we're starting with the more current parts, and we're working downward, knowing that each of the different layers can see themselves horizontally, but they may be disconnected, and the next layer up. They may sense it, but they can't really necessarily see what's below, which means then the childlike parts see a whole lot, right? So they know how to kind of zig and zag. But what it also means is this. Now, I should say some of these parts are Okay, so let me qualify that. A lot of these parts are aware by necessity of a lot of these parts because the firefighter parts, repressed parts, are trying to keep. It's almost like putting their arms sideways. They're trying to keep the blue and the green layers separate. Okay, so I take that back. This layer certainly knows about all of these, but some of these don't know the full extent. Okay, now as far as what you were saying and the hypnosis piece, ultimately the goal is for the therapist. I'll speak to the therapist quickly. It's this. It's your job to get to know each part. Now, I worked with Mary, who had 250 parts. Now, did I get to know every single 250 part? No, but I think I met every single one at least once. Now, IFS, Frank Anderson, I love the work they're doing, but different people have different opinions. Somebody asked him, one of the therapists asked him, "Do you need to form a?" I'll just say it. The question was, "Do you need to form a primary relationship with the parts or just the core person?" And he said, "Just the core person." Okay, I cannot disagree more strongly. Okay. Um, each of these parts are a part of the core person. So, as a therapist, whoever presents themselves, I want to establish a rapport with. And by doing so, it has a trickle down effect. So, ultimately, where we're going in therapy is this level. This is the level. And notice I said internal COO and primary gatekeeper. I think that's supposed to be two, right? Did I misspell that? Oh, well. This will either make or break therapy. And this is the most intense time because this is when you're going to connect with a lot of the heinous stuff. Because as you're dealing with these parts, you're starting to get in touch with these parts. Okay. But it is these parts, the repressed parts, or the IFS firefighters, that hold the key to you being able to align with. So Mary's going to start to get to know these parts eventually. These parts don't want to talk to Mary, right? These parts have been really disconnected, but these were the really heroic parts. But these are bound and determined to make sure that that the system, that everybody, and ultimately the core person stays alive. So unless and until, and it's only a matter of time, I can talk to them. These will be the most intense parts. So these have a lot of energy. This level, this has a lot of more. That sounds Italian. This has a lot more, a lot the more. This has a lot more intensity. Nothing compared to these, because look, that's a part that'll kill themselves. Has no problem killing themselves. Okay. Do you know how much intensity and therefore respect you better pay this layer? Okay. These are the layers that this is where the perps, quite frankly, this is where they really did their greatest amount of work. And this is where we're going to undo their work to set these captives free. And then what happens is they and Mary become partners in the journey. And so that's where also this is going. So if you bring up memories that bypass, ultimately, this is where Frank Anderson really does like, he will ask permission, but they all understand the rapport. But if you, in a way, I could see it's disrespecting them, but what it's doing is it's bypassing them. Well, you don't bypass them. Now, it's different than when Tina comes up to talk. Has she bypassed it? Well, I'd put it this way. She kind of made it through. That's different than me as a therapist disregarding them. This is the most important layer. They know it, and you'd better know it. Okay. So if I do hypnosis, which I don't, I'm bypassing their layer And this is interesting. And again, you know what? If you're working with a therapist and you do hypnosis, I mean, Colin Ross does it, right? I don't want all of a sudden you to think I know more than your therapist, or just take it with a grain of salt. And if it hasn't worked, maybe that's the reason why, meaning things come up and then you don't retain them. What's happening is they are taking the memories back down. So you're in an unproductive, endless loop. Okay, so that's why I tend to stay away from hypnosis, because I want it to be productive. And when it's time, how will you know it's time? When this level, when they say it's time. But they won't say it's time until they say it's time. And they won't say it's time until they say it's time. They're ready, but they're scared. Some of them are really eager, but these are very childlike. So they're always ready, but they're also, this is where the pain's coming from, because they're locked away. They've been pushed away somewhere. Okay. So, by the way, if anybody's familiar with the idea that we're going to cast out these, the negative voices into Sheol, into the pit, don't do that. I mean, if you're a Christian, it's already taken place. What you'll be doing is you're going to send them a message, these little ones that are angry, that you don't want to hear from them. So you kind of re-traumatize them. I learned the hard way, and bless their heart, I had to apologize to a lot of them. So, anyways, that'll be for another program. So as far as what not to do, also, I don't believe EMDR is effective with people that have trauma-based parts, that has all this. Okay. If you've been in a car accident, if you've been through combat, if you've been through a current day trauma, significant, I've seen it be very effective, like with an auto accident survivor that couldn't even get behind the wheel of a car. But she, as an adult, had an adult brain. Um, I don't know if it's possible, maybe out of my own ignorance, but I don't do hypnosis, and I don't do EMDR. I certainly myself would never do EMDR on a survivor. I'll tell you, because also to me, it's too similar to what perpetrators are doing as well. It's inducing something. I'm aware of it. I've taken some trainings just because I really wanted to learn, but having gone through, so I could be certified in it, I just didn't pursue it because I wanted to know so that I really could be fairly educated. But for me, it's just not the right thing. But if I was dealing with a combat vet, if I was dealing with a police officer, an accident victim, absolutely, I have referred people to EMDR, but I just wouldn't myself. It's just me talking here. I just wouldn't recommend a survivor of this level of stuff to go for EMDR, because again, it's trying to do something very quickly. And it's, yeah, rewiring the brain and whatnot, but it's just the injury to self that was done is going to have to be worked through, because ultimately EMDR isn't going to help put knapsacks where they belong. My goal with every single part ultimately is we're going to help them take the knapsacks they were given, meaning the emotional irresponsibility, the hurtfulness, and we're going to give it back. And so I want them to be conscious so that they know on a scale of 1 to 10 what level of injury, as far as injustice, so they can get back their anger and give that back so they can be set free with that. So that's why I'm not a big EMDR fan for this. So what to do methodically, convince those parts of you that you're not going anywhere. Right. So continue the process of journaling. I would also, in closing, work on a timeline. Maybe we can start with that next time, Emma. How about that? We'll show people what a timeline is. Those are two of the most powerful things. They really should go together. So now that I'm thinking about it, we'll talk about what a timeline is. And so the two things that I recommend any client start with is journaling and a therapeutic timeline, because that's going to begin to draw other parts up to begin to release some of their own recollections, and they're going to begin to participate. And then they'll know you're serious, because Mary right now has huge gaps in her memory. But where is all her memory of her entire life? It's all there. So her brain isn't broken. She is smart, usually smarter, higher IQ than the average person. But all of these contained, if you lined up all their memories, she'd have her complete memory. There we
Great
go.
information. Quick question about EMDR too. I've heard different things about it. There's been survivors I've had on my show that swear by it. There's other people that say that they tried it and it didn't work. Do you think there's a potential for it to work maybe with somebody further along in their healing, where they're aware of all their parts, they're aware of maybe most or all of their memories, and they want to use it for assistance at that point?
It's just a theory, meaning what are my thoughts? And from what you said, I could conceive of that. Let's say if someone has been able to get in touch with and they really know what happened, so all the memories have come back. Yeah, then it makes sense to me that maybe that could speed things up, because then they're like a combat veteran.
Right.
Now they just need to be separated from the trauma so they can see that it really is in the past. So they don't have to keep running from it. So I can see that. What I would say is this: if you're curious, if you're interested, then find a therapist that's trauma informed. I think most EMDR therapists are trauma informed, because that's what you're going to be working on. But
Wow.
I would do some of that screening, right? Ask if they're familiar with IFS, ask if they're familiar with parts, and would they be willing to work with you, and give it a try. If it works, wonderful. As a matter of fact, then kind of ask Emma to come on our program and describe it, right? What happened, what worked, because I think that's a positive thing. Give kind of a shout out to your therapist. I think that's a wonderful thing, because then other survivors know who they can go to for EMDR. But if it doesn't work, what I would say is this: don't feel discouraged. I would say it just, for whatever reason, it wasn't for you, not the right thing at the right time. Doesn't mean, well, okay, maybe not now, but you can always try it again. But if for whatever reason, and it also may be that it just feels like you're being put in that altered state again, and it's just too close to the sense of, then it may not be for you. So I'm just one therapist that is fairly trauma informed, who just doesn't, I don't want to fool around with anything to do with the unconscious, putting someone in an altered state. They're already there. Um, and I just don't, for me, I just don't think there's a fast fix. But again, that probably gives contradictory messages. I would say, if in doubt, try it. If it works, beautiful. If it doesn't, don't get discouraged.
Great answer. I appreciate you sharing. It seems like the people that I've heard use it, or at least the people that have said on my show, used it like later on in their journey. But again, I have had people on that said that it didn't work. So for you seeing different things, I was curious what your thoughts were on it. So I appreciate you sharing, Jon. And all of that was really interesting, like the journaling. And I know I'm not, I had to think on the fly on my answers, but
I think you were perfect. You were tapping into your right brain, right? And me
I
too.
hope
I mean,
that it was helpful for people to sort of put themselves in somebody's shoes that's going through something that they haven't, because it's, it is, it can be hard to understand when you haven't gone through that. But even just doing that with you, it made me have to think in a way that I never have before. I've never been asked questions like that or had to think about internalizing dialogue with myself in that way, like parts of myself that I don't know already. So I appreciate you inviting me to do this with you, because it was kind of challenging, but it definitely helped my empathy grow, for people who have gone through this, and helped me be able to think, relate a little bit more to maybe what some of my guests go through.
good. And the important thing also to know is there's no right or wrong answer, because the parts know us.
Yeah,
Right? The
right.
parts know you. So the person doing the journaling doesn't necessarily have to worry about coming up with the right response. It's that feel. So you'll get that sense. that the most important parts are no. Okay. Anticipate it's only a matter of time until you hear from the Danas that are going to give pushback. So don't be shocked, but hang in there. They want to know, are you willing to hang in there? Right? So if you run away or if you, then they know you weren't serious. So it's an encouraging thing. If you get that negative pushback, kind of reframe it that it's a good thing. And so then you don't have to parse your words. Just say whatever comes to mind, letting them know. And that's why, Emma, your response as Mary was perfect, right? It's okay, I'm not going anywhere. I've decided we're on this journey, and tell me what I need to know.
Super informative. And again, I appreciate you two putting that graphic together because the visual is really neat. It's a whole different dynamic of being able to discuss this, and a different way for people to learn. You know, you're providing a visual for people who have just had to rely on their imagination to look at this, and seeing it all there, it sort of helps take everything and put it into one spot. And it's like, oh, so that's sort of what the idea that I had might look like if I could see it, you know? So thank you so much for putting that together. That's a really extensive graphic. And I know that that probably wasn't easy for you, but it's really cool. And I'm excited to keep diving into that with you. And I appreciate you using it today too.
You're more than welcome, Emma, and I commend those that are still hanging in there with us that continue. Yeah, you can see by that chart, we've just breached the surface of all this. So we may be here for the next 10 years unpacking this whole thing. I'm kidding, but there's a lot. But it'll all make sense if somebody continues to stay with us and tune in.
Well, that's encouraging for people who are loving the Tuesday night healing sessions with Jon. So, for people listening, this will be an ongoing thing as long as our schedules permit. And hopefully, we get 10 more years out of it because this is pretty cool. But, Jon, let people know where they can find you and support you because you are on a lot of platforms. And I want everybody to go follow you and to show you love and support and to dig into all the free content that you put out all the time.
Well, I appreciate it. Again, the primary site is SurvivorSupport.net. In past episodes, we've gone into those. So watch some of the past episodes. We've scrolled through those. But again, a lot of tabs. I recommend go from left to right. Under the podcast tab, you will see Journey to episodes of Journey to Healing. That's my Friday night podcast, which deals with important counseling topics, and doing a series on forgiveness. Probably still will be for quite a few months. I think there's 25 episodes, so there's about 25 hours. And then if you keep scrolling down, you will see 2 years worth of the topic of boundaries. After I'm finished with forgiveness, I'm going to pick up with boundaries again. Each program is pretty much an hour. Sometimes I've broken those into just 30 minutes. If you want to tune in live, there's a link on the homepage, or just remember the call letters, as it were, tecn.tv. And that's on Friday nights, 8 to 9 p.m. Every Friday night. And so I fixed the link, by the way. So it does work. As a matter of fact, let's test it out. Let's see if it goes to now the station itself, TE. So there we go.
There we go.
If some of you aren't conservative, don't worry about it. Though it's a very engaging station, and they have wholesome movies and things like that. See, they even have cartoons, many of them back from the, just a lot of engaging stuff. So you can interact live. I tend to, you'll see, there's the owner of the station, but you'll see my picture right there. So there's my thumbnail. So I just have my 1 hour slot because that's all I can afford. But a lot of different people that tends to focus on conservative political issues. But Ken McClinton was good enough to ask, would I be willing to? As a matter of fact, I think just to the left of my little thumbnail picture, let's go with that. Maybe yep. So I did a series, or he and I did an interview about that predator who was a fake pastor, by the way. So every now and then, Ken will run my program, as he will some of the other. Okay, so that's where it links to. So Friday nights, if you want to join me, I tend not to actually watch the comments because I have a hard time multitasking. It's enough for me to try to keep the little things that I need to do. But anyways, so you can see me live. The next site. So that's SurvivorSupport.net, and then Journey to Healing, that's that program. The kind of training site, or that which has more focus on predators, is churchprotect.org. And that one, the dynamic part that I keep up with is the Insights tab. It kind of shows how many people are looking at that. But under the Insights tab, this is really part of the reason why I do social media. I pretty much just do Twitter now because I can't keep up on everything. That first tab, by the way, when called to do hard things, if you want to see my background as the first whistleblower, as far as the first prison psych staff to blow the whistle on inmate abuse, that's my story there. That's the reason why in the US they don't use solitary confinement as a punishment against mental health inmates. So I'm the key whistleblower, and then two of my co-workers, Caroline Christoph and Mary Lou Seamuth, stepped up along with me. So there's our story and my story with that. But under the Insights tab, you'll see a compilation of some of the things that I post. And I really just try to provoke thought and try to keep up with that each month. So if you want to see what I do if you don't want to go onto Twitter, want to find out what I'm posting, you can go on there. But also the truths about predators. That has a lot of good insight from my years working with predators, worked now for about 15 years with perpetrators. And if you want to see some of my background as far as what people have said about it, and then because I've yet to be published, I will at some point in time when life slows down. But I give then some of inside emails as far as work-related emails. These are some comments that people have made about my work. But then under the research methods and challenges, I break down how do you really research this whole thing, research predators, and what's the best method. So again, a little more technical, but good information on churchprotect.org. If anybody would like me to come out and talk to a church, it's a little more expensive, and I'll tell you why. I want churches in the area to come together and hold that. So that way they can combine the cost, and it is fairly expensive for me to go out, but it's very intensive. So I just throw that out there. That's available if somebody would like to. I also do a seminar. You can find that under churchprotect.org. No, under SurvivorSupport.net. I do a grief and loss workshop. So if anybody would like that as well. Then there is Unmasking the Trans Movement, because predators are embedding themselves within that. So that kind of gives an update on what we're doing. Brad Wilder, our producer, had a heart attack, so we put things on hold for a few months, and we're getting back up and running. And as a matter of fact, I'm ready to almost publish another episode that we did the other night. And then the very last one is the blog, SurvivorSupport.us. Again, I have not added to it recently, but it has a lot of good information so that you can either go directly or right through there. So you can click on that. It sort of loads by most frequently opened, but if you also go to the blog itself, you'll see over on the thumbnail the different, there's quite a few blog posts. There we go. And then the YouTube channel. I have a smattering of all sorts of stuff on YouTube. So you can, the easiest way, click on videos and you'll see a smattering of them. I consider it to be a very important interview of a combat veteran. You'll see it, the most recent one's right there, Repressed Memories. Every survivor needs to watch that so you can take heart that I know others have probably published bona fide stories of repressed memories, but this one is a verified, bona fide story. So as long as we have one, then the False Memory Foundation can go pound sand, and we have it right here.
Yes.
Right? So here's the most powerful case, verified case I've ever heard of. So part 1 and part 2 of that one. And then I guess Twitter.
And then you also have Unmasking the Trans Movement.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's right. On YouTube, the same title, so that we upload those onto there. And that's good clinical, fact-based information if you want to find out why should somebody be concerned about the trans movement.
And then your Twitter, which is fantastic.
And their Twitter.
And that is at Euler_Jon. And you guys, if you are on Twitter, I love Twitter. Twitter has been such a blessing to connect with people, and a lot of people that you guys are watching weekly or following here and there on social media or on YouTube, you know, just like Jon, they're going on and posting every day. So you guys get some insights on daily things that Jon is doing, articles that are relevant today, what he's up to, when his next podcast is going to be, his links. He has in his bio all of his links for all of his sites. So I love following everybody on Twitter that is on my show because it gives you the ability to connect with them daily, which is really fun, and to go hype them and support them and see what they're up to. So, and Jon posts, I mean, everything that he posts is educational. It's an insightful, it's shocking at times. And he's very bold. He's very brave. And so you get to see the warrior in Jon on Twitter in a lot of ways, and get to see the perpetrators that come after him for speaking about all of this. And I love it. I think it's awesome to see, you know, you're fighting so hard every day, Jon, for victims and survivors, you know, and at the expense of you. Like you literally have people that go on here and oppose you and come after you, and, you know, aren't happy that you're doing it, and you just go along. You're just a warrior. You stomp all over them and, you know, put those fires out real quick, and it's awesome. So I encourage you guys, if you guys are on Twitter, definitely go follow Jon, and that way you can connect with him daily and get to see all of the updates day to day that are in the news and in headlines, and, you know, that even aren't in headlines that should be. Jon's really good about just posting kind of what we need to know about all of these issues and agendas going on in the world. So I commend you, Jon, for it. I see what you battle every day, you know, and I also see the growing support that you get, and both are really cool.
Well, Emma, thank you. And thank you for your commitment. And I encourage, well, obviously, people watching this are seeing your channel, and you're doing a wonderful job. So thank you for your commitment.
Absolutely. It's an honor. And this is really fun getting to do this weekly with you. So I
Yes.
really appreciate you coming back on. Is there anything else that you wanted to close with, or anything that we didn't talk about?
Well, I think we've covered a lot, so we'll just pick it up at this point. How about next week?
Perfect.
All right.
Okay. Well, you guys listening, like I said, go support Jon. Go follow both of his YouTube channels. His Unmasking the Trans Movement YouTube page is phenomenal, and it's definitely shadow banned and being suppressed. So even you're just subscribing, even if you don't have time to watch all the videos, go subscribe and watch when you can. But go like some of his videos, share them if you can, watch them, especially if you can. But just go connect. You know, it's really good to get eyes on whistleblowers and survivors, and people's advocating on behalf of survivors. They purposely suppress this information and, you know, make it really hard to find. And so when we actually engage with it and like it, share it, we can help break that algorithm and show it to more people who actually need to see it, which is everybody. So go connect with Jon on all of his platforms. I have a playlist on my channel for Jon, that has all of our episodes. They're in order from, I believe, newest to oldest. So you guys can go back to the beginning and just watch, but I'll put that in the show notes too for you guys. Share that with people, especially if you know somebody that needs help or resistant to wanting to get therapy, or just scared. Maybe they want to get it, but they're scared. You know, it's a really great way for them to get tools on what to expect, and just on their end, you know, how to be an advocate for themselves. Now they can have tools to go vet a therapist. They have questions to ask when they're calling around, and they can sort of see what that process looks like before they actually go into the office or do a Zoom call like what Jon does, and do something remote with a therapist. Jon's super accessible. If you guys have questions for him, go reach out. He's very communicative. So if you guys have your own personal questions, write them in the show notes if you want us to say it on the show, and we're happy to ask those, or go ahead and DM him and ask him in person, and I know he'd be really happy to help guide you. So Jon, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate you. Thank you guys so much for supporting. I appreciate all of you. It means so much to have your support and to see people caring about these topics. You know, I've seen it grow exponentially just in the last few years, and really excited to see what the next few years hold, and how far we can get with exposing all of this with the help of people like Jon, who are working overtime and for decades, to help us get there. So you guys go connect with us. I'll have everything in the show notes. God bless you all, and we will see you next time.
Now to a Fox 61 exclusive. A Meriden police officer is charged with assault after a violent road rage incident caught on camera.
Fox 61.